Today, we're talking about the Revocable Living Trust and how this can be the foundation for your estate planning, especially when you start to get to that age where you're making a little bit of money, you're accumulating assets, and you have a family that you're starting. So I hope today we can really explain how important the Revocable Living Trust can be for you. And we're just going to dive right in. This is Facts, Figures, and Fallacies from the Frontline podcast. I'm Nick, and I'm sitting here with Mitzi and Jessica, and we're talking about Revocable Living Trust. So let's dive in here. Unfortunately, something we don't always like to think about, but we're all eventually going to die one day. And so a lot of people will get ahead of the curve, and they'll, set up a will. They'll create a will, which is a great thing to do. Mm-hmm. But when you die and this will has to go through probate, that becomes public record. And so one of the nice things about setting up a revocable living trust is you can actually avoid probate altogether of your will. And instead, your trust is going to tell the will and tell everyone what to do. And you don't have to go through that probate process.
Just a quick question. Probate is where it goes through basically taxation by the state. Is that right?
Well, it goes through the court system, and some people don't even have a will, for one, and that can be a nightmare when it goes through probate because it's kind of up to the court system to decide what to do with those assets, who to disperse them to. But yes, it goes through the courts, and if you have assets in different states, then you actually have probate process in each of the different states where you have assets. So that can be a lengthy and just frustrating process waiting for that probate to finalize. And that becomes public record. So with the Revocable Living Trust, you set up a layer of privacy, and you can even name your trust something random that doesn't have your first and last name in the title, and that will just give you that privacy that you're not getting simply by having the will only.
And do you avoid probate if it's set up correctly?
Right. You will avoid the probate process.
Okay.
And so that alone is a huge benefit.
And we do have a lot of clients that come to us that maybe they've gone to LegalZoom.com and they've set up an irrevocable trust or they've set up an estate and a trust and a LLC and they don't know how all of these work together.
Right.
So I think Nick if you had come to us before you went to LegalZoom.com, we could help guide you to make sure that you get it set up properly. Mm-hmm. And so when he says this is the foundation of your financial planning and your lifelong financial planning strategy, Nick, you call it your great divide, and you've got your trust at the top. This is kind of the foundational starting point. And then as you accumulate maybe rental properties, different assets, LLCs, or maybe you're starting an S Corp, all of those can fall under this revocable
this under the revocable trust umbrella, essentially. So the word revocable is extremely important because that means that during your lifetime, you can make edits and changes to this trust. Whereas if you set up the irrevocable trust, initially you'll have some stipulations and the way it's set up, but that's carved into stone at that point, and you can't make changes like you can with the Revocable Living Trust. And so it's a little sad, but, one example we see pretty frequently are, someone has a child that they lose trust for, maybe they pick up some bad habits in life, and so the parent doesn't want to, pass along a big lump sum of money or a house or something like that. And so during your lifetime, you can actually edit your Revocable Living Trust to change the beneficiaries or change where the assets go, and so on and so forth. So,
and they're also treated differently for tax purposes.
Yes. So a revocable living trust is a disregarded entity for tax purposes. So essentially what that means is you don't have to file a separate tax return for this. It's just part of you. It's like an extension of you personally. You can set up a tax ID number for the Revocable Living Trust, but really you don't have to. You can just have it connected to your social. And ultimately, you're just going to file your normal 1040 tax return, your individual tax return. And the trust can still own different assets, maybe an LLC, an S Corp, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But the Irrevocable Living Trust has to actually file each year a 1041 tax return. So that's another benefit to the Revocable Living Trust is it's the disregarded entity status.
And the 1041 that you file will either pay taxes itself or it'll distribute the income through a K1.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the individual recipients would pay tax on that income.
Yes, that's true. So those are some of the negatives about the Irrevocable Living Trust. So another interesting thing that I just want to circle back to is I feel like sometimes people don't understand the importance of the privacy protection. You know, there's a difference between the privacy protection and the asset protection. Those are two different things. And so while the will can set up the asset protection part, this Revocable Living Trust does both. It does the asset protection and it does that privacy protection. So one thing we always recommend is if you set up a Revocable Living Trust, don't name it the Nick Grantham Revocable Living Trust, because then anybody can see whose it is, all the info, all your private info, the assets in it. You know, you want to set it up as the Purple Sky Trust or some random name that no one is going to be able to link to you and your family. Right. So that's an important piece. So now I actually want to switch to the whiteboard, and I'm going to do a drawing to show what I call the Great Divide. And this is going to be a great way to actually set up your assets, your Revocable Living Trust, your estate plan, and hopefully this will make things even more clear. We have our Revocable Living Trust. That's going to be the foundation for your estate planning and asset protection. Now, like we mentioned earlier, that is going to be a disregarded entity. So that just means it's part of your 1040. So, you may have a spouse and you both file a joint 1040. And so you're both going to be filing a tax return together, and the Revocable Living Trust is going to be just there as almost an extension of you and your spouse.
Just to clarify for anyone who doesn't know, a 1040 is just that personal tax return that you're required to file every year if you have a job and make money.
Exactly.
Right. And so the Revocable Living Trust doesn't earn income. It doesn't have anything that belongs specifically to it. As far as the IRS is concerned, all of that is owned by you personally, and it's going on your 1040.
And that really makes things just so much easier in terms of tax planning. This is what we call the Great Divide. And the idea here is we want to divide our ordinary income activities from our assets or passive income activities. And so over here on the left side, I'm going to write down ordinary income. And this is going to be things like, for example, your W-2, if you are an employee somewhere. Maybe your wife is also an employee, so you have two W-2s. Okay, so you and your spouse both work, you each have a W-2. You know, sometimes you may actually be a business owner and you set up an S Corp or an LLC. And that's going to be active income that you're every day, you have that active participation. This income is taxed at the highest level because it's ordinary income, which is also subject to the Social Security and Medicare taxes. So this is going to be where you want to keep really that bucket of activity, all those ordinary income activities. Now, on the right side, this is going to be our passive income / assets. Now, this is going to be for maybe you want to get rental properties. So maybe you have an LLC or a series LLC, and you have different rental properties that you're growing. You're doing maybe long-term rental. So you've got that. Maybe you're building up a portfolio of cryptocurrency. So you've got your crypto. Maybe you're buying land. A lot of people like to buy land, so maybe you've got some land over here. And this is going to be on the other side. And so the idea with the Great Divide is you don't want your S Corp or your LLC where you're actively participating to own your assets. Rather, you want your passive activities in a separate LLC. One of the big reasons that we advise this would be specifically with S Corps. The S Corp is going to help you save on that self-employment tax, that Social Security and Medicare. So you want to set that up for your ordinary income activities. If you have a small business or something or even a big business, something that you're running on this actively, that's going to help you save that self-employment tax. But you don't want to have your rental properties under that S Corp, because the main reason would be if you do pass away, when those, say, rental houses or land, when that passes on to the beneficiary, they will not receive a stepped up basis in those assets upon death like they would if they were in a single member LLC or a disregarded entity that is under you and your trust. The S Corp is set up kind of more like a traditional corporation, a totally separate entity from yourself. And so that is one of the reasons why you don't want your assets in the S Corp, okay? And so this right here shows the Great Divide, and really everything is going to flow up into your Revocable Living Trust. So the Revocable Living Trust can own your rental property, your land, your LLC that you have your passive activities in, your assets in, and then it can also own your S Corp on the other side. And so that's going to allow you to have that asset protection. It's going to allow you to have some privacy, and it's going to set you up with a great estate and tax plan for the future.
Okay, so if I am, obviously you said that, setting it up now is better than later, but if I'm 80 years old and I've built several different businesses, passive and active, and I haven't set up a revocable living trust or any kind of trust or will for that matter, is it too late to go ahead and set that up and have the trust own all of these businesses and assets so that you can avoid probate?
No, so it's never too late. If you're still breathing and watching this video right now and you have not set up a trust, a will, if you don't have, and you have assets and beneficiaries, then yes, I would highly recommend getting with your estate planner. If you don't have one, find an estate planner that can really help set this up, and it's not too late. Now, on the flip side of that, I do advise setting this up, as soon as you can, but obviously if you don't have a family yet, if you don't really have beneficiaries, and if you don't have assets, obviously it doesn't make a whole lot of sense until you get to that point where maybe you've started a family, you've started to make some money, gather some assets. But I would say it's, once you get to that point, you might as well start it up, set it up as soon as you can.
Or if you don't have a family and you do happen to have some big assets or big business and you have an idea of where you'd like it to go, you can still select anything as a beneficiary, right?
Right. Churches, different charities, other family members, definitely. Right. So ultimately, these are some of the main reasons why the Revocable Living Trust can be such a great foundation, and we highly recommend setting one up. And just to recap, some of the main pros of setting up a Revocable Living Trust are the privacy protection, the avoidance of probate, and especially the probate in numerous states where you have assets, and the fact that the Revocable Living Trust is a disregarded entity and does not require the Form 1041 tax return each year. These are some great benefits to the Revocable Living Trust. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, the Revocable Living Trust can be changed and edited throughout your life. And so these are just all great reasons why setting up the Revocable Living Trust should make sense for you. So thanks so much for tuning in. We are going to link some great content in the description below. So please be sure to check that out. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time on Facts, Figures, and Fallacies from the Front Line.